Welcome to Real-ationship Goals, a podcast all about the realities of healthy relationships. Real-ationship Goals is a project of the Advocacy Center for Crime Victims and Children in Waco, Texas. If you or someone you know has experienced sexual violence or harassment and is seeking support, services, or needs more information, links to resources and our hotline number can be found in the description. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of their organizations or affiliates. Welcome back to this episode of Relationship Goals Podcast, episode 14. We're happy you're here. I'm Blythe.
I'm Mariana.
I'm Kyla.
And I'm Aleigh. Okay, I have our story for this week, and this week we are talking about Beauty and the Beast. There is an animated version, and there's also a live version with humans. That's how you want to call it. Belle is the daughter of an inventor who loves to read and daydream. One day she's like strolling through the town, mostly running errands, but she has interactions with the people in the town, and the town is considered like everybody that is in that town is not a stranger. But for Belle, it's a different type of situation. She seems like the streets are more empty to her. In this case, Belle considers herself a stranger in her own town, which seeps into the feelings of loneliness, even though you are surrounded by people. So Belle in this story is othered because she points out how the town doesn't really meet her needs and her wants because she longs for that deep connection with another person, which also like feeds into like the reason why it's hard for her to have like those meaningful friendships. But for the town people, to them, Belle is like really strange and confusing. So there's that conflict between the two, the town people and Belle. So when we think about like her imprisonment time with the beast in the castle and her love affair with the cursed prince falls into this like interesting layer of their friendship. While they have a conversation about loneliness, the beast's condition is really different because it is of his own making. Whether it's for Belle's condition is because of her surroundings. So although like with the beast condition with feelings of loneliness, he is like detaches himself emotionally from like his servants, even though like his servants are still there and they're still dedicated to him. He feels guilty for their current like situation because they're pots and teacups and clocks now. So he feels guilty about that. And when Belle is there, they have that conversation. It allows that moment of them to like unload that guiltiness of feeling of loneliness and like isolating himself, and which leads the beast into like becoming more happier and healthier and just like reaping the benefits of a significant social interaction with Belle. So their relationship can't talk today begins to blossom into a deep, meaningful friendship. And so I just thought that story was really, really beautiful, even though we were talking about loneliness today.
Yeah, no, thanks for that story. That's good. Today we're talking about loneliness, to kind of set us up to make a distinction between being alone and being lonely, right? Being alone is just a physical state. You're in a space and there's no one else around you, or like no one in the same space as you, versus loneliness is more about a feeling of being disconnected. Like I want to be connected to people and I want to, feel seen and heard and known and feel like I have a sense of belonging, but I'm lacking that in some capacity, or in one or more areas of my life. So like a wanting or desire for a connection when we don't have it. So loneliness. What are your thoughts, y'all?
Yeah, loneliness is I think can be kind of sometimes tricky to identify in yourself or even in other people, because I think that loneliness is often conflated as alone. And Ariana's story was just talking about, Belle lives in a town surrounded by people and still feels lonely. And so you can you know, go to school and be surrounded by people, or go to your workplace and be surrounded by people, or you can live in a home with other people and still feel lonely, because, you know, like Blythe was saying, like loneliness is about feeling disconnected, and you don't have to be physically alone. I lived alone I still live alone. I don't know why I say I live. I still live alone. And I lived alone for quite a while, and I think there have been seasons of loneliness during that. But I think that when I lived with a few roommates, like I think there were times when I probably felt more lonely than I do right now. Like I live alone, but I do not feel lonely, right? And so it's largely about connection and knowing that you are seen, that you are heard, that you are known by people. And so I think that lonely and alone can be the same thing, but they don't have to be. And so it can sometimes be hard to identify when someone is feeling lonely, or even identify yourself, like, yeah, I am feeling lonely, even though I'm not actually like physically alone, you know? So, yeah.
What are ways you think like loneliness, especially like if someone is in maybe like already in like relationship and not necessarily like physically disconnected from people, like that loneliness can show up or like look like, or like what various forms kind of maybe can it take or sound like, or
I think like if you're thinking about the romantic partner realm, like with one partner wanting to spend like excessive time with the other person, you know, we're all individuals and we all have our own things that we tend to individually, and like that can be one dynamic that you can look into. If a person is like wanting to spend like every second, every hour of the day with their significant other, that can be a form of loneliness, and like not wanting to be alone by themselves, because it just like, it just like feeds into that feeling of loneliness, and just like, well, I'm by myself, I'm here alone, and I don't know how to handle it. So that's one way of looking at that.
I think a lot of it stems from, speaking from personal experience, like a insecurity, like both maybe in your relationship and even just in yourself, of like you like for any reason, like I personally struggle a lot with anxiety. I've just always been remarkably anxious. Most people can tell it by literally the everything about me. This is how I hold my hands like 90% of the time. But so that has impacted the way that I engage, like with friendships, with relationships, and there's been a lot of growth as I've like gotten older and just become more like emotionally healthy and independent. Like I've been able to rein that back, but a lot of it can just be like an insecurity and a fear of being alone, just because it's that, oh, I'm only with myself right now. And you just kind of need to fuel that with the distraction of like other people, but that's not healthy, because whenever you are in a healthy place, you're able to be by yourself. You want to have that independent time, just to engage in reflection, to do something that just you want to do. And that's healthy for your relationship, because being together all the time, you can be together a lot, but being together 24/7 doesn't allow you the time to grow as an individual. So allowing that insecurity and anxiousness to take over the relationship will end up leading you to be in a more like unhealthy place than, which it's hard to cycle, because then you're unhealthy and you're like, oh, I'm going to engage in unhealthy behaviors more because I'm not healthy, and it's just ongoing.
I think another one is like, we think from, I mean, even homework, whatever, school, like taking on like tasks or responsibilities that you maybe you do or you don't have the capacity for, but like taking on a specific responsibility, and maybe you're the only one doing it, or like that has committed to it, or maybe you're not the only one who's committed to it, but you're the only one actually doing the work for it. We've all done group projects, we know. And so then that can feel very isolating and lonely, being like, I am the only one responsible for this, or no one else seems to care about this, and no one else is putting in the time and effort I'm putting into this. And so that can, and sometimes like responsibility can be lonely, right? Like if you, it just, I don't know what else to say about that necessarily, but it can be lonely because if you're the only person with that responsibility, and there is literally like per kind of how that works, like no way to offload that responsibility, like that, you know, that can be isolating, but
yeah, there's an interview between Brene Brown, love her, and Vivek Murphy.
0 episodes without mentioning Brene Brown.
Yeah, it's not possible to not include her. Anyways, a conversation and an interview between Brene Brown and Vivek Murphy, who is a former Surgeon General. And they're talking about loneliness. And one thing that they say is like that, you know, sometimes we don't say lonely. It can also sound like, I feel like I'm carrying this entire load all by myself. I feel like if I disappear tomorrow, nobody would even care. I feel like I'm invisible. That loneliness, sometimes like, we can communicate loneliness without actually saying it. I think it may be a good caveat to add here that we've talked about in other episodes, that like loneliness is also, loneliness is something that a lot of people experience, but like if you are like isolated, like someone is like using like isolation, like in a relationship to like intentionally like cut you off from other people, or say, no, like that you have to spend time with me, not with like, whether it's friends or family or doing other things that you care about, like that is both unhealthy and abusive and just like not okay. I don't think we need to go into that more, but just to kind of emphasize that is not good. So don't do that.
Like a deep stigma, or like another caveat to loneliness is like, if I am alone, that must mean I'm not likable. And a lot of people misunderstand that, like, when you are alone, that is the time and space for you to blossom and have growth and get to know yourself a little bit better. Not necessarily like, if you are alone, oh, that means nobody wants to be around me. That means I'm not worthy of social interaction with other people. That is totally false, you guys. It's just that time is like really sacred, and just like really embrace that moment for yourself. Like, being alone doesn't necessarily mean that you are not worthy of connection with other people. It just means right now, this is the time for you to get to know yourself a little bit more.
I think that's really important to say, especially for everyone, but I think that we see that a lot once our peers or friends start being in romantic relationships, whether that's middle or high school or college, or even when we're thinking marriage or more like quote unquote permanent partnership. Like, I think it can be really easy to do a lot of comparison of like, well, like all of my friends are have a partner, or are dating someone, or are married, or whatever. And so, but I don't. And so why am I not lovable? Why does no one want to, date me or be in that type of relationship with me? And so, and I mean, I think you could go there too with like jobs, if you're hunting for jobs or looking to make a change, and you keep getting turned down at interviews, right? Like all of that feels like why, Ariana was saying, like, it's like, what is it about me that is making people not want to be with me or bring me on board to this team or this workplace or whatever? And it is, I think very often not you.
I think sometimes it can also be necessary to, here's my tagline, communicate how we're feeling like with those around us as well. Because sometimes I think as people, we can be ostriches with our heads in the sand. Sometimes we're all so wrapped up in the things that we're doing. Like, no matter how intentional you are in your relationships, there are going to be things that you just don't see. And that's okay. That's not your fault. So it's vulnerable and it's scary, but sometimes it can be good to say, like, to reach out to somebody, and especially like I'm thinking in like close best friendships or romantic partnerships, and just saying like, hey, I'm feeling disconnected. I am feeling really lonely, and kind of vocalizing that, because sometimes also it can be impossible to have your needs met if your needs are never known. So it's just a thought too.
That's good. Yeah. I think, yeah, good to like emphasize that we can feel connected in some parts of our life, but like disconnected in other parts of our life, right? Like you might have, like maybe like you're really close with your family and like that is a really quality relationship. You feel really seen and heard and loved and known and connected. But like when you're at school and you go to the lunchroom and it's like, who am I going to sit with? Like I feel like that, like do like whether that's different spaces or just like in different settings, like just because you feel connected in one place doesn't mean that your loneliness in another setting is invalid. That like we need different kinds of connections and relationships, and like a gap is hard. I don't know if there's like a solution, or I don't know if this one, like this question is answerable, but like what do we do about it? Like we feel lonely in some capacity, like how do we respond to that loneliness? Maybe in ourselves or in others. I don't know that we can respond to it in others, but
I think that's just the ongoing question.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of these things that we can say are very easy to say and then much harder in practice.
Sure.
You know, that's which is true of a lot of sort of like self-work or kind of working through these uncomfortable feelings. So I think that, you know, Ariana was talking about like, you know, it's not you, and this is a good time to like sort of like nurture that positive sense of self or self-image and really feed into yourself, report into yourself doing things that you love and spending time the way that you want to spend time, and some of that might be like reaching out to people or joining a new group or a book club or whatever, you know, like in many cities there are groups of people doing things that you may like to do, and maybe joining that or something like that. But yeah, I think you know, focusing at least a good portion on you and establishing that and that confidence and sense of self and all that. So I think is one thing.
Not that this is feasible for everybody, but something that's helped my own personal loneliness that I struggle with sometimes was getting a cat. Just because I now like forever have this little guy that's just hanging out. We have sleepovers every night. We're just I just yesterday turned to her randomly and just said, "Do you think we're best friends?" She answered yes.
Okay, great.
So like I think that just having that just constant companion that I just sit around and I watch movies with, and I talk to her about my day. And like I said, just having even just something to sit by you in silence is a very nice thing. Like I said, probably not feasible for everybody, but a dog, a fish, a ferret, teacup pig, I don't know.
Wow.
Any kind of pet, I think that could just be another good way just to kind of combat that too.
Yeah. That's good. I hadn't thought about that. Not sure about the fish though.
You don't like fish? They're a little cold. They're standoffish.
Yeah, I think maybe another thing too, and this is, yeah, maybe take it with a grain of salt, but like for the people that like, especially in a situation where it's like, okay, I'm in relationship with people but I feel disconnected from them, to like try to like, as we relate to one another, and I know I'm really good at talking about the weather, but like try to connect with the people in your life on a level other than like the weather or how the football team is doing or something like that. And I think in that too is also like embracing vulnerability, and like and being willing to go there, and also doing that with yourself and with other people in our lives too. So I think with that, Carla has our relationship goal.
Yes, I do. So just to, we've talked about a lot of stuff to do with loneliness and how to combat loneliness, and we're going to kind of lean into, I think, the tone kind of our conversation today. And our relationship goal for this week is to do one thing that you love by yourself, for yourself, just because you love it. And this can look like all kinds of things. It could look like listening to your favorite album or a really nostalgic album. One of the examples was the High School Musical 2 album, which was a throwback, and I love it. painting your nails whatever color you want, or getting your favorite flavor of ice cream, taking yourself for a walk. A lot of people, like I've seen it become a trend now to take yourself for picnics, which I think is super fun, like just with a book. And whatever it looks like is whatever you feel will fuel you the most and will just allow you that time to be with yourself. One thing, all for you, all with you by yourself, and with the goal of just kind of maintaining that whole sense of self and that relationship with yourself. So it popped into my head that I thought of with this relationship goal was the song Soulmate by Lizzo, which I love very deeply and recently came back into my life yesterday, and I've listened to it 10 times since then. But one of the lines from it is just, I'm my own soulmate. I know how to love me. And just kind of like full self-love of it doesn't matter as much what my relationship looks like outwardly, because what it starts with in the foundation of how well I can love other people is how well I love myself. So
thanks, Kyle. And I have our recommendation for today, and I'm going to recommend Abbott Elementary. It is a show that is on network. I don't know which one, but I watch it on Hulu. It's on Hulu, but it's also like on network TV. So it is a show about a group of teachers at a sort of underfunded public elementary school in Philadelphia, and they're kind of like navigating all of that, and it's very cute, it's very funny, and just fun in general. So that would be my recommendation.
I love that. Yeah, I'm gonna add it to my list to watch.
You should.
Thanks for being with us. Thanks for being with us here. Also, I guess a good caveat to add that like relationships that are not in person are valid relationships too. But we'll see you next time for episode 15, which will be our last mostly episode for the season. We'll see you then.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Real-ationship Goals. This episode was produced by the Prevention and Education Department of the Advocacy Center for Crime Victims and Children in Waco, Texas. You can follow us on Instagram at ACCVC_prevention. See you next time.